A man, cold and unfeeling, ties a sick pony to a tree deep in the wilderness. Small, weak, and alone, the pony stands motionless, its frail legs trembling, its breath shallow. The howls of coyotes echo through the trees, their golden eyes lurking just beyond the shadows. The pony closes its eyes, accepting its fate. But just as the coyotes close in, something extraordinary happens, something that will change everything. Stay with us for a powerful story of survival, courage, and an unexpected bond that defies all odds. The wind howled through the dense pine forest, carrying the bitter chill of an approaching storm. The sky, once a soft blue, had darkened into a dull gray shroud, and the scent of rain lingered in the air. Somewhere deep within the wilderness, far from the warmth of a stable or the kindness of human hands, a small, frail pony stood alone, tied to a gnarled tree with a thick, unforgiving rope. Its coat, once a gleaming chestnut, was now matted with mud and dried sweat, clinging to its delicate frame like a shroud. Every rib was visible beneath its thin skin, and its small legs trembled from exhaustion. It had not eaten in days, nor had it been given water. The pony's dark eyes were wide with confusion, filled with a silent plea that would never be answered. The man who had brought it here, Caleb Stokes, a hardened farmer who had long since lost his softness toward animals, stood a few feet away, pulling his coat tighter against the wind. His expression was one of indifference as he secured the rope around the tree, ensuring there was no way for the pony to wander free. "You're more trouble than you're worth," Caleb muttered, shaking his head. The pony did not fight back. There was no energy left for resistance. Caleb had once intended to train it for his small ranch, but the pony had proven too weak for labor, too fragile for hard work, and too skittish for riding. A waste of space, a waste of food. With the colder months arriving and resources scarce, he had made the decision without hesitation. Let nature take care of the problem. The wind rustled the tall grass, and in the distance a sound echoed through the trees, a low, hungry growl. The forest had its own rules, its own balance. The week did not last long. Caleb glanced toward the fading daylight, the sun dipping behind the jagged mountain peaks. The shadows stretched long across the clearing, and the wind carried the distant call of something wild. A coyote, perhaps, or worse. "They'll find you soon enough," he murmured, not in cruelty, but in finality. With that, he turned and walked away, his heavy boots crunching against the damp earth. He did not look back. The pony did not call after him. It simply lowered its small, weary head and closed its eyes, waiting for whatever was to come. Night fell swiftly, swallowing the forest in darkness. From the shadows, a pair of glowing yellow eyes emerged. Then another, and another. The pony was not alone anymore. The night had fully settled over the wilderness, stretching its cold, merciless fingers through the towering pines. The wind had softened into an eerie stillness, broken only by the occasional rustling of undergrowth. The pony, still tied to the gnarled tree, shivered, not just from the cold, but from the oppressive weight of the silence. Then the silence shattered, a soft snap of a twig, a whisper of movement in the shadows, and then the unmistakable sound of breathing. The pony lifted its weary head, its ears flicking back and forth. Its instincts screamed danger, but its body was too weak to respond. The long rope around its thin neck kept it tethered, helpless, exposed. From the darkness, a pair of golden eyes flickered to life. Then another, and another. Coyotes. Not wolves. The deep wilderness was home to these smaller, more opportunistic hunters. They weren't as powerful as a wolf pack, but their hunger made them just as dangerous. They would take their time. They would circle. They would wait for exhaustion to fully settle in before striking. The largest of them crept closer, its lean body nearly blending into the night. Its ears were pricked forward, nostrils flaring as it took in the scent of weakness. The pony flinched, a weak tremor running down its frail legs. The leader let out a sharp, whispering growl. It was an invitation to feast. One of the smaller coyotes edged forward, teeth bared. The pony's muscles tensed. Instinct told it to run, but the rope held firm. The lead coyote took another step, lowering its head, its long, curved claws scraping against the frozen earth. It was close enough now that the pony could feel the warmth of its breath, smell the raw hunger radiating from it. The pony let out a soft, trembling whimper, not a fight for survival, not a plea for mercy, just acceptance. The coyote lunged. A sharp, piercing whistle split the night apart like a blade. The coyotes froze. The pony's ears flicked forward. From the darkness beyond the clearing, a lantern's glow flickered to life, swaying as a lone figure stepped out of the shadows. The old hermit had arrived. The man moved with purpose, his worn boots crunching against the frost-bitten ground. The lantern in his hand flickered with each step, its dim light casting long, flickering shadows across the clearing. The coyotes hesitated, their golden eyes darting between the man and the pony. The leader let out a deep, cautious growl, its muscles coiling as it weighed its chances. The hermit didn't hesitate. With a practiced motion, he swung the lantern in a wide arc, its glow flashing against the trees. "Get!" His voice was low, firm, undeniable. The coyotes knew when to challenge and when to retreat. One by one, they slunk backward, disappearing into the underbrush, their eyes lingering for just a moment before vanishing into the blackness. The night swallowed them whole. The hermit let out a slow breath, lowering the lantern just enough to examine what had been left behind. His sharp eyes narrowed when they landed on the pony. It was smaller than he expected, its legs frail, its coat dull with neglect. Not wild, not built for survival. And yet, someone had tied it up here, left it as bait. The hermit stepped forward, moving slowly. He smelled of smoke and earth, the scent drifting through the cold air as he approached. The pony flinched at first, its muscles tightening, but it didn't have the strength to pull away. "Easy now," the man murmured, his voice quieter this time, almost thoughtful. "You've been left for dead, haven't you?" His fingers found the coarse rope digging into the pony's delicate neck. His jaw tightened. The knot was deliberate. Whoever had left this creature here hadn't wanted it to wander. They had wanted it to suffer. The hermit pulled a small, worn knife from his belt and set to work. The blade was old, but sharp. It sliced through the rope with ease. The moment the last strand fell away, the pony's legs buckled. The hermit caught it just before it could collapse fully, his rough hands steadying the fragile creature's weight. "Not yet, little one," he whispered. "You're not giving up yet." The pony let out a soft, exhausted exhale, leaning into the warmth of the first kindness it had felt in days. The old man sighed, adjusting his grip. With surprising strength, he lifted the pony's frail body, supporting it as he fashioned a makeshift sled from fallen branches. The pony barely moved, too weak to protest as it was gently settled onto the sled. He hitched the sled to his mule, an old, sturdy creature named Dusty, and gave the reins a slow tug. "Let's go," he murmured. The small group began their slow journey into the depths of the forest, leaving the abandoned clearing and the ghosts of what could have been behind. The journey was long and slow. The forest stretched in all directions, a maze of shadow and frost-covered pines, but the hermit moved with ease. He had lived here for longer than he cared to count, and he knew these woods like the lines of his own weathered hands. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow. It was going to be a bitter night. The hermit's cabin came into view just as the sky deepened into pure black. It wasn't much, just a small one-room dwelling with a slanted roof and a single curl of smoke rising from the chimney. It was built for solitude, for survival. And now, for saving a life. Inside, the warmth was immediate. The hermit worked quickly, setting the pony down onto a thick bed of hay in the farthest corner of the room. The floor was lined with wool blankets, rough but soft enough to bring some comfort. He stirred the fire, watching as the flames thawed the cold from the pony's shivering body. For a long while the creature did not move. The hermit watched. He had seen things left to die before. He had buried animals, buried people. The wilderness had no mercy, and men even less. Yet this pony had fought to live, even when it had every reason to give up. The hermit knelt down beside the creature, holding a wooden bowl filled with warm, herbal water. "Drink," he murmured. "Come on now." The pony's dark eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they locked onto the hermit's, deep, endless, filled with something the man couldn't quite name. Then, with a slow, trembling motion, the pony drank. The hermit let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That's it," he whispered. "The fight wasn't over yet. This continues the deeper, more emotional version while keeping it realistic for a pony. The action and emotions are richer and more intense while keeping the story logical." The fire crackled softly, casting flickering light across the rough wooden walls of the cabin. The warmth seeped into the room, chasing away the bitter cold that had followed them from the wilderness. The hermit, Eli, sat on a small stool near the pony, watching it with the patience of a man who had spent his life waiting on the land, waiting on time. The little pony lay curled on the bed of hay, its breathing shallow but steady. It had survived the night. That alone was a victory. Eli ran a calloused hand down his beard, studying the frail creature before him. He had seen many things suffer in this world, and he had learned long ago that not everything could be saved. But something about this pony felt different. It should have died out there, and yet it hadn't. With a slow breath, Eli leaned forward and dipped a wooden spoon into the bowl of warm, herbal water. He brought it to the pony's cracked lips. "Come on now, little one," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The pony didn't resist. It was too weak to fight, too tired to fear. The warm liquid slipped past its lips, and for the first time in what must have been days, it accepted something other than suffering. Eli sighed. He didn't even know why he was doing this. He had spent years living alone, cutting himself off from the world beyond these woods. People were cruel, men were selfish. He had seen it too many times to count. And yet, here he was, nursing a dying pony back to life. The storm passed in the night, leaving behind a world coated in frost and silence. Eli worked tirelessly over the next few days, tending to the pony with the same care he once gave his old hunting dog, Rusty, years ago. He named the pony Willow. It suited the creature, small, delicate, but not yet broken. Each day Eli gathered herbs from the forest, boiling them into a bitter-smelling paste that he rubbed gently onto Willow's wounds. The pony flinched at first, but soon learned that the man's touch was not one of pain. Eli fed Willow in small portions, boiled oats, softened hay, warm water laced with honey. He watched carefully as the pony began to eat, began to trust. The days stretched into nights, and soon Willow could stand again. The first time it happened, it was just for a few seconds, a weak, trembling effort before the pony collapsed again. Eli had seen men quit for far less. But Willow tried again, and again, and again. By the end of the week, the pony could stand on its own. By the second week, it could take a step. By the third, it could walk. Eli never said it out loud, but watching Willow fight to live did something to him. It was as if, for the first time in years, something in his heart, something he thought had long since gone cold, began to stir again. One evening, as the fire burned low, Eli sat on his old rocking chair, watching Willow rest in the corner. His fingers traced the rim of his tin mug, but his thoughts were far away. He had known a time when he had something to fight for. A long time ago, before the world had pushed him into solitude, he had been a different man. He had a family once, a wife, a daughter. But the world had taken them from him. A sickness came through one winter, swift and merciless. No amount of medicine, no amount of prayer had been enough. And when they were gone, Eli had done what any man with a broken heart and nowhere left to go would do. He disappeared. He left behind the farm, the town, the world that reminded him of what he had lost. He came out here into the wild where no one could hurt him again. And for years he had lived like that, alone, surviving but never really living. But now there was Willow. Eli sighed, rubbing a tired hand over his face. "Damn pony," he muttered, but there was no bite in his words, only something softer, something that felt dangerously close to belonging. By the fourth week, Willow could trot across the clearing outside the cabin. Eli stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching as the pony tested its newfound strength. There was something different now, a light in Willow's dark eyes that had been missing when Eli first found the creature. "You've got some fire in you after all," Eli murmured. Willow flicked an ear toward him as if acknowledging the words. The moment was peaceful, almost too peaceful. And then, a low growl cut through the crisp air. Eli's spine stiffened. Willow's head shot up, ears swiveling toward the tree line. The coyotes were back. Only this time they weren't just curious. This time they had been watching, waiting, for the right moment. Eli reached for his rifle, his movements slow, deliberate. Willow took a step back, its muscles coiling with nervous energy. The pony wasn't strong enough for this. Not yet. From the trees, a single coyote stepped forward. Not the same leader from before. This one was leaner, meaner, with a fresh scar running down its muzzle. A survivor. It licked its lips, watching Willow like prey. Eli gritted his teeth. He had fought off worse things than coyotes, but the thought of losing Willow after all this? Unacceptable. He raised his rifle, took aim. A sharp bark split the air. Another coyote emerged from the brush, then another. Eli's pulse hammered. This wasn't just a scouting party anymore. This was a pack. They had come for Willow, and they weren't planning to leave empty-handed. The coyotes fanned out, their low growls filling the clearing like the rumbling of a distant storm. Eli tightened his grip on the rifle, eyes flicking between the shadows. Willow took another step back, its nostrils flaring. It was scared, but it wasn't frozen. Something had changed in the pony. It wasn't the same weak, abandoned creature that had been left to die. Eli could see it. The fight, the fire. The leader coyote inched closer. Eli fired a shot into the ground, the sound cracking like thunder. The coyote flinched, but did not run. Eli cursed under his breath. "Willow," he murmured, keeping his voice low. "You need to move now." The pony's dark eyes met his. The coyotes were closing in. There was no more time. Eli raised his rifle again, and before he could fire, Willow did something no one expected. The pony charged, straight into the pack, straight into the waiting teeth, straight into the fight of its life. The world slowed to a heartbeat. Eli's breath caught in his chest as Willow lunged forward, hooves kicking up frost-covered dirt. The coyotes tensed, momentarily caught off guard. This was not the easy kill they had anticipated. The leader, a scarred, wiry beast with hunger burning in its golden eyes, snarled and darted forward. Willow whipped around, her small but powerful legs lashing out in a desperate kick. Crack! The leader yelped as a hoof struck its shoulder, sending it stumbling sideways. But the pack did not scatter. They circled, tightening their formation, lips curling back to reveal sharp teeth. Willow's chest rose and fell, her breath clouding in the cold air. Eli stepped forward, his rifle still raised. "Get back!" he barked, firing a second shot into the dirt. The sound shook the trees, but the coyotes were too hungry to care. They knew they had numbers on their side. Willow stomped the ground, ears pinned, eyes burning with something that hadn't been there weeks ago. Defiance. She wasn't running, she wasn't surrendering. Eli felt something twist inside his chest. This pony, this small, fragile creature he had saved from the brink, was now standing her ground against an entire pack of predators. She had learned from him. The scarred coyote lunged again, aiming for Willow's hindquarters. Eli didn't think. He fired. The shot whizzed past the coyote's ear, just close enough to sing the promise of death. The beast skidded to a halt, panting, reassessing. And then it made its decision. It let out a sharp, guttural yelp, a signal. One by one, the coyotes peeled away from the clearing, their hungry eyes still watching. They had lost their chance, but they would remember, and so would Eli. He lowered the rifle, exhaling slowly, watching the last pair of glowing eyes fade into the shadows of the trees. The battle was over, for now. Willow stood still, panting, her small chest heaving with adrenaline. Eli ran a hand over his face, clearing his thoughts. "You're a damn fool," he muttered, stepping toward her. "Charging into a pack like that." Willow flicked her ears, turning her head to meet his gaze. There was no fear in her eyes anymore. Only trust. Eli sighed, stepping closer. He placed his rough, calloused hand against Willow's damp neck, feeling her heartbeat thrumming beneath his fingertips. "You're tougher than I gave you credit for," he admitted. Willow snorted, as if agreeing. For the first time in years, Eli let out a small, tired laugh. Not just because Willow had survived, but because, for the first time since he buried his wife and daughter all those years ago, Eli felt something other than loss. He had spent so long thinking his heart was made of stone, but this pony, this tiny scrap of life abandoned in the wild, had proven him wrong. He wasn't alone, not anymore. Days passed, then a week. The coyotes did not return, but something else did. Eli noticed the first sign in the early morning, just as the sun painted the sky with streaks of pale pink and gold. Tracks, boot prints, deep, fresh, leading toward the cabin. Eli's jaw tightened. Someone had been watching. That evening, he doubled the security around the cabin. Traps, reinforced the door, rifle within arm's reach. Willow seemed to sense the tension in him. She lingered closer than usual, her dark eyes scanning the tree line just as often as his own. Something was coming, and Eli wasn't wrong. The next afternoon, as he split firewood behind the cabin, he heard them. Horses, not coyotes, not predators of the forest, predators of a different kind. Eli set down the axe, rolled his shoulders, and waited. Within minutes, 3 riders emerged from the trees. The man in front, a tall, broad-shouldered brute with a cruel smirk, wasn't a stranger. Eli knew that face. Caleb Stokes. The man who had left Willow to die. Eli didn't move as the riders closed in. Caleb Stokes pulled his horse to a stop, looking down at the old hermit like he was something stuck to the bottom of his boot. "There she is," he said, voice thick with amusement. His eyes flicked toward Willow. "I knew she wouldn't die easy." Eli crossed his arms. "She ain't yours anymore." Caleb chuckled, glancing at his 2 men. "You hear that? Old man thinks he can keep a pony that ain't his." One of his men, a wiry fellow with crooked teeth, spat into the dirt. "We don't take kindly to thieves." Eli's lips twitched. "Neither do I." The tension snapped tight between them. Willow stood behind Eli, her ears flat against her head, sensing the danger in the air. Caleb dismounted, dusting off his coat. "Now listen here, old man. I don't want to spill blood over a useless little pony." Eli smiled, but it was the kind of smile that showed teeth. "Then turn around and ride out." Caleb's amusement vanished. He reached for his gun. Eli moved first. A warning shot. The crack of the rifle sent the other men's horses rearing. Eli stood firm, eyes locked onto Caleb. "I'm only going to say this once," Eli said, voice low, dangerous. "I don't care how many men you bring, or how many guns you point at me. You left this pony to die. You threw her away. That means she ain't yours anymore. She's got more fight in her than the lot of you put together. So go ahead. Try me. See how that works out for you." The clearing went still. For a moment, Eli thought Caleb might draw, but he didn't. His eyes flickered to Willow. And maybe, just maybe, he saw something there. Not just a pony, not just a lost, useless creature. Something stronger than him. Something he could never break. Caleb exhaled slowly, lowering his hand from the gun. "You're a stubborn bastard," he muttered. Eli smirked. "I've been told." Without another word, Caleb mounted his horse. He turned to his men, jerking his head toward the trees. "Let's go." They disappeared into the forest. For good. Eli exhaled, running a hand over his beard. Willow stood beside him, watching the trees where the men had gone. "You did good, girl," Eli murmured, patting her neck. The sun dipped lower in the sky. Eli looked at her for a long time. "You deserve more than this old cabin," he admitted. The pony flicked an ear. And for the first time since finding her tied to that tree, Eli knew what he had to do. He took a step back, then another. The trees stretched endlessly before them, open land, open sky. Willow hesitated. Then, in one smooth, effortless motion, she ran. Eli watched as she disappeared into the wild, and he smiled, because she wasn't running away. She was running home. Some would say Willow was just a pony, but she was something more. A fighter, a survivor, a symbol of resilience. She was left to die, discarded like she didn't matter. But she refused to give up. She endured hunger, fear, and the cruelty of men, yet she found the strength to fight back. And isn't that the lesson for all of us? Life will knock you down. People will doubt you, abandon you, tell you that you're not worth the effort. But just like Willow, you have a choice. You can stay down, or you can stand up again and again until you reclaim what's yours. And sometimes when all hope seems lost, someone will come along, a stranger, a friend, or even fate itself, to remind you that you are not alone. Because true strength isn't about how big or powerful you are. It's about how hard you fight to keep going. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope. Subscribe now and help spread stories of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals.